Welcome back to our educational series. This week we're going to cover the topic on why you feel hungry. Most people will experience this when they're in a calorie deficit and you're trying to lose weight. You're doing most of the things right, but there's a couple of things that you might want to understand before jumping into a calorie deficit and why your body's feeling a certain way. So let's say that you start your diet, everything's going good, and then it gets to a point where you realize you're under eating. So much so that you go and have a couple of snacks. Okay, I think we've all been there. Now what's actually happening, without getting too sciencey, is it's your hormones. And it's learning how to balance these two hormones. The hormones that I'm talking about is ghrelin and leptin. So ghrelin is actually the hunger hormone. That's what pops up when it tells your body, hey, we need some food in our stomachs. Now that's going to cause you to want more food. Then you have the fullness hormone, which is called leptin. Now this is pretty much telling your body, hey, we feel full, we feel satisfied, everything's all good. Now what tends to happen is when you jump into a calorie deficit and you undereat, the food's not staying in your stomach long enough for you to feel full. And usually these are foods that are higher in carbs and fats. Now foods that are higher in protein and high in fiber, they usually take longer for the body to digest. So they'll stay in your stomach longer, which decreases that ghrelin, that hunger hormone. You're not going to want any more snacks because your body is telling your brain, hey, we don't need any more food. We're still digesting the food that you had from before. So it all comes down to the types of foods that you're having in your calorie deficit. Try and choose foods that are higher in protein, higher in fiber, as well as closest to its natural source. When you think of something that's processed versus unprocessed, obviously the unprocessed, the more natural types of foods will take longer for your body to digest. So that's how you'd be able to keep those hormones balanced, as opposed to just choosing something like, you know, brownies or cookies only. Like when you're trying to lose weight, it's not just about being in a calorie deficit, because ideally, like I could just tell you, hey, like you can have one cookie for breakfast, one cookie for lunch, and one cookie for dinner, and you'll be able to lose weight, yes. But will your body be able to get all the macros, micros, the nutrients, the minerals from the foods that you're choosing? Probably not, okay? So you'll lose weight, but you'll probably lose the wrong type of weight because you'll lose muscle as well. And ideally, you want to keep the muscle and you want to just make sure that it's predominantly fat that you're losing. So the best way to do this is to control the quality of foods that you're choosing. Hi, son. Okay, come on in. Say hey. Hi, son. Okay, so I was talking about how processed versus unprocessed foods manipulate your hunger. Now there's different types of levels to processed versus unprocessed foods. So you've got the first level. This is like foods that is closest to its natural source. So let's say something like an apple. That's like 100% natural, okay? And then you've got the next level of processed. So let's say we've got apple slices in a can. So it's a little bit processed, but not too much. Basically, when you're trying to process something, you're trying to make the food last longer, but then there has to be some sort of manipulation to the food source. Okay, so let's go to the next level of processed. Now you might have something like, you know, apple juice. So there's some contents of its natural form, but then we've also played around with it and manipulated it a little bit more to make it last longer. Now that's just one version, but you can see how this sort of works. The more you process something, the more you're taking the natural goodness from that sort of food. For example, you can look at something like chocolate. That's ultra processed so that it lasts longer. When you think about what that looked like in its natural form, you know, it's probably something like cocoa, sugar. So they've taken all of these natural ingredients and then they've changed it and manipulated it with things that's going to make the product last longer, and then you have something like chocolate. And because it's so processed, when you eat it, it goes straight through your stomach. It doesn't take long for your body to digest it, and so it's going to cause that hunger hormone to increase, which causes you to snack more. That's why when you're in a calorie deficit and you choose predominantly carbs and fat-based foods, it's easier to keep snacking on those types of foods. For example, more chocolate or more cookies or more lollies. So more protein, more fiber, and more natural food sources in the foods that you're choosing so that you can stay in a calorie deficit and balance your hunger hormones. To round everything off, it's not just about being in a calorie deficit that you want to work on. You also want to focus on the quality of foods, okay? More natural, more protein, more fiber. Nice and simple. So choose some meals that you want to have this week. Make sure you prep them in advance. It's a lot easier to stick to a meal plan or a meal structure when you've got meals ready to go. That way you don't have to do last minute trips to the takeaway store. And then see how your hunger levels are balanced. And also, side tip, make sure you have high water. Okay, roughly 3 liters or more is what you want to have. Next week, I'm going to break down another topic. So if you want to hear anything else related to health and fitness or losing weight specifically, then comment below a couple of topics and I'll make a new video on that topic. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Shot.